I'm curious with writers, do you feel like the sparks of inspiration where like if you have to table a song and come back to it, it's like it's not going to be the same song. Like you almost have to, there are certain moments you have to like crystallize in order to make like for example, if there's a song that I'm editing over the course of several weeks, that is just going to be, there's going to be a fundamentally different flavor to something that it just came in one session.
Yeah, well, there's work involved no matter what, right?
Totally.
And I think I agree with what you're saying. For me, people I've talked to, creative people, I think this is pretty common. It's like sometimes your best stuff comes with it feels like the least amount of effort, and then because there's some moments where lightning strikes or whatever, and you have that. It's like the right time, the right frame of mind, the right sort of inspiration. And things just pour out. Like what I think some of my best songs are, and I could look at them from album to album, and all what I would consider my best songs are generally the ones that came within like a day or two. Just like, but for sure, like the lightning strikes in a day, and I just where it's going. You just got to put the pieces together, and the words come and all that stuff. And then there's, it doesn't, some people maybe are like that if, there's Bob Dylan's out there, but that doesn't always happen for me. And so a lot of the time it just becomes work.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
It's still, it's satisfying work. But you get that initial inspiration and you try to sort of carve out where it's going, but it doesn't get there so easily. And so, yeah, some songs I have, there's a whole process, and sometimes it's frustrating. It feels like work. You got to force things into shape. You're like trying to mold it, and it takes some effort. You get there. In the end, you might get a great song, and the listener, maybe they don't know anything. They don't detect that. But there is something. There's a balance between the work and the inspiration that if you get it right, because it's always work, right?
Right.
If you get it right, then it feels effortless, but the craft is like well intact. Whereas sometimes if you labor over it, it just feels labored over, and it's missing a bit of that sort of whimsy that comes with not overthinking, because it's coming from some kind of deep inner place that your intellect hasn't interfered with too much. Do you know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean, and I'm curious about. Like, because I know that some people will hear this concept of work and be like, that's where I stop. Like they'll be carried by that chord of inspiration, and then they'll get discouraged. And I know there are a lot of people have trouble finishing and actually being like, this song is done, or this song is ready to be recorded, or this song is ready to be released. There are traps kind of all along the way to make it so the song never gets birthed into the world. Do you have any techniques or anything that you could share? Like if somebody's running into those walls, what do you do personally? Like, how do you interpret that work? How do you get from that place where you have the inspiration, it's almost there, but then you turn it into something real?
My initial thought is I abandon it.
Yeah. No, that can be appropriate too.
No, I know exactly what you're saying, and there's a gradation, right? Obviously, like each song, each project, each kind of piece is different in terms of measuring kind of what you need to put in to get what you want out.
Okay.
And like I said, on one extreme of the scale is like effortless. In 20 minutes, sometimes you're like, oh, fuck, it just flows out. And you're like, holy shit, the gods gifted me a song.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, you're like, I didn't write that, actually.
Yeah. And I think that's a gift,
Yes.
Nobody knows where that comes from. And you hear that over and over from creative people that happens. But it's not always the case. Like, so it's just, like there's some songs that I love. It's like there's a seed there that I'm really excited about.
Okay.
I'm like, I just got to hammer through this. But sometimes it isn't working, and if I don't give up though until I feel like I've really, what happens?
Yeah.
I don't actually give up, but some other song sort of takes its place, and I get excited about that.
Yeah.
And then I move on to something. So it's a balance. I guess I have a hard time totally relating to people who say, I just never finished it, or I couldn't finish it. There's tons of songs that I haven't finished, but there's always something else that kind of gets me excited to keep going, and then I feel good about that. And sometimes I'll go back to things. I'll keep plugging away when I'm not feeling overly inspired by something I'm excited about, because I think you need to keep that element of work in it, because it is work. There's a bit of a mythology about it, like just it's always got to be joy, or it's always just you're gonna feel it. Well, that's not reality. Like, you know, like Leonard Cohen, for instance, he saw it purely as work. And obviously we're not all Leonard Cohens,
Yeah, right.
but, you know, I've read about, you know, moments he'd literally be lying on his floor, smashing, you know, banging his forehead against the floor, trying to just find the word. It's work. He would sit down with a pen and paper, whether he had an idea or not. So there's kind of two spectrums, right? And then you got your Bob Dylans who are writing a song in a cab ride.
Yeah.
I guess the idea is it's just always work. But the mythology, getting back to it, with Bob Dylan, he's on that extreme, but his notes are filled with edits. Like his songs, if you go back into it, he was always editing, always working. It's just everybody's got to work at it, and sometimes some people it comes a little more easily, some are not. But there's a balance, I guess, right? It's like you could work as hard as you want and end up with a piece of shit that you're not happy with. Well, then that work's wasted. So it's sometimes you got to be prepared to walk away. Is all I'm gonna say, I guess.
No, it's good. That's a good point. I think that's one of the fun things about conversations like this, is that fundamentally both extremes end up being true. Where it's like some days you're gonna feel like Bob Dylan, some days you're gonna feel like Leonard Cohen, some days you're gonna feel like you don't even know how to play music. And
yeah, there's no one way to do it. That's the thing. There's no rules in this shit, right? I think we get bogged down by, you see what other people are doing and you think that's the way to do it, and you always think other people are doing it more easily than you. They're doing it better than you, and most of the time they're having the same thoughts.
yes,
You know.
yes.
We're all full of doubts.